Staff wants to start the slide deck, although I understand we don't have a projector today, so if anyone in the audience would like to see the application and the project we're considering, I guess you're more than welcome to huddle around staff's table up here and take a look at their iPad. And we also have printed copies of the application and agenda items, so if you would like to see a copy of those, you're more than welcome to come up and grab one. All right, welcome to DDRC, members, staff, and guests. Multiple staff members are present to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly and that all applicants and citizens are able to communicate with the commission at the appropriate times. If you are here today and would like to speak about a case, please provide your name clearly into the microphone, and please be sure to sign in either at the back of the room or at the podium for documentation purposes. If you are here today to speak about a case, you must speak up when the chairperson calls for public comment. If staff will please take a roll call.
Certainly. Ms. Branham?
Here.
Ms. Gallo? Here. Mr. Greenberg? Here. Mr. Lee Decker?
Here.
Mr. McKenzie? Mr. Salibi?
Here.
And Mr. Shelton?
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. In order to avoid ex parte communications, DDRC members are under strict instructions not to discuss cases under consideration with the public or with each other outside of the public forum. The meeting typically starts with staff calling the case, giving a summary of the project, and then calling on the applicant to present if they wish. Decisions are typically made in one evening. Decisions may be appealed within 30 days to a court of competent jurisdiction. Oaths will be administered individually as we hear either from applicants or from live speakers. Applicants with requests before the DDRC are allotted a presentation time of 10 minutes. This time should include, but is not limited to, an overview of the project, case history, and any pertinent meetings held regarding the request. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant, such as attorneys, engineers, and architects. This time limit does not include any questions asked by the DDRC or staff regarding requests. Members of the general public are given the opportunity to address their concerns in intervals of 2 minutes. Applicants may have 5 minutes to respond. Staff has a timer and will make presenters aware of when their time has expired. Staff, are there any changes to the agenda?
We have one change under the regular agenda, 1009 Pine Street. A request for a certificate of design approval for construction of a single-family home in the Old Chandon Lower Waverly Protection Area has been deferred.
Thank you. The DDRC uses the consent agenda to approve non-controversial or routine matters by a single motion and vote. If a member of the DDRC or the general public wants to discuss an item on the consent agenda, that item is removed from the consent agenda and considered during the meeting upon request. The DDRC then approves the remaining consent agenda items. Will staff please read the consent agenda?
Certainly. The first item is 3325 Lyle Street, a request for preliminary certification of the Bailey Bill in the Earlwood Protection Area, Area A. The second is 900 Calhoun Street, St. Timothy's Episcopal Church. This is a request for a recommendation for designation as a Type 3 landmark in the Governor's Mansion Protection Area. The next is 1000 Gervais Street, request for certificate of design approval for exterior changes and preliminary certification of the Bailey Bill in the West Gervais Historic Commercial District. Next is 210 William Street, request for preliminary certification for the Bailey Bill and for a certificate of design approval for an addition in the Granby Architectural Conservation District.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the DDRC who would like any item removed from the consent agenda? Are there any members of the public who would like an item removed from the consent agenda? All right, hearing no requests, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval of the items on the consent agenda with all the staff recommendations, along with approval of the March minutes.
There's been a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. All right, there being a motion and a second, any other discussion? Will staff please take a vote?
Certainly. Ms. Sims Branham?
Yes.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Mr. Greenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Lee Decker,
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie,
Yes.
Mr. Salibi,
Yes.
and Mr. Shelton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. On to the regular agenda.
The first case on the regular agenda is 3111 Lakewood Avenue.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Again, if anybody would like to see, normally we have a projector presenting everything staff is covering, so you can all see. If anyone would like to see, again, we've got packets up at the front if you would like. Sorry, thank you.
This is a request for approval of exterior changes in the Earlwood Protection Area, Area A. I'll be moving through slides slowly today. All right, the house at 3111 Lakewood Avenue is a brick bungalow built in 1940. It has slightly projecting front entry covered by a shed roof and supported by round porch posts. The center bay projects from the house and includes the chimney, front entry, and a tri-part window. The right and left bays are recessed and each feature a single 4/1 window. There is a covered porch along the left side of the house with one bay towards the front or on the front wall of the house and stretching 2 bays deep. The applicant is asking to enclose the side porch with a combination of glass and solid walls that is not in keeping with the district guidelines. The proposed design would feature a large window taking up the front-facing bay of the porch, supported by wood framing and a low knee wall. This design would be repeated on the front side bay as well. This design is in keeping with the guidelines and would be acceptable, but the applicant is asking to install a door surrounded by hardy board cladding on the back side bay and a nearly solid wall on the back wall of the porch. The amount of solid material on the rear side and back sections of the porch will detract from the existing architectural form and design of the building and create a false sense of historical development. While porch enclosures are allowed in many, if not all, of the city's historic districts, there is an established pattern of transparent materials as the primary material for the construction, either as glass or screening material. This is intended so that the space still clearly reads as a porch and its structure is still visible. The proposed scope of work here would not allow for that precedent, having an overuse of solid materials on 2 of the 4 porch bays, all of which will be visible from the public right-of-way. Staff has asked for all 4 of the sections of the porch to be constructed primarily of glass. The applicant has asked to move forward with the proposed design. And I apologize that the slides here that in the slides there is not an image of the proposed design, but it is in the packets. And we have extra packets here for you. The principles for this project. It is often necessary to increase the space of a building in order for it to continue to adapt to the owner's needs. Over time, a family's space needs change, and in order to accommodate these needs, a building may need to be enlarged. While these additions are permitted, they should serve to reinforce and not detract from the existing architectural form and design of the building. Guidelines. Site additions so that they do not detract from or obstruct important architectural features of the existing building or those around it, especially the principal facade. The Earlwood guidelines classify enclosures as additions. Therefore, this proposal will be evaluated as such. While the proposed enclosure is positioned between the original porch posts, the selection of materials for the side, rear, and rear bays of the porch would detract from the architectural features of the house and cause a false sense of historical development. Enclosing the porch with such a large amount of solid cladding materials in those sections will cause the space to look like a fully enclosed room rather than a porch. This is contradictory to the precedent that has been set for porch enclosures throughout Columbia's historic districts. It has been established that the materials used to enclose porches will be as transparent as possible, maintaining the appearance of a porch. The proposed design for the front and front side bay of the porch are in keeping with the guidelines and are complementary to the architectural features of the house. Staff has encouraged the applicant to replicate that design on the rear bay of the porch and use a similar design for the side rear bay, with the addition of a glass door in that section. Guideline 2, design additions using materials and detailing that are compatible with the original structure. The proposed window design is in keeping with the materials and detailing on the house. The addition of large portions of lap siding hardy board are not in keeping with the original structure. It is acceptable to use a minimal amount of hardy board as a supporting knee wall and wood framing for structural support of the new windows. It is not compatible to clad an entire bay with lap siding, which is not found on the house and is not keeping with the historic elements. Guideline 3, limit the size and scale of an addition so that it is clearly subordinate to the original structure. While placing the enclosure between the original brick porch posts is correct and will be subordinate to the structure, the size and scale of the solid infill is not. Having such a large portion of the wall made of solid cladding, it will compete with the original brickwork rather than be subordinate to it. The staff recommendations. The staff finds that the proposed porch enclosure at 3111 Lakewood Avenue is not in keeping with Section 5 of the Earlwood Protection Area Guidelines and recommends denial of a certificate of design approval. Should the applicant wish to install an enclosure with primarily glass infill on all bays of the porch, staff is open to the review and approval of this modification being deferred to staff approval. So we see the porch here on the slides. This is the porch as existing now. All 4 bays of the porch are visible. And as you can see in your packets, what they have proposed is having the front bay facing the street would be primarily a window. It would be about 6 feet high. The same pattern would be in that second section on the side. And then the next section back would be a door with solid infill around the door. And the back wall of the porch would be a solid wall with a transom window. So basically the back and the side rear section of the porch would be almost fully enclosed with solid material. What we see on other porches in the neighborhood, these two are both on the same block. The house on my left is an enclosed porch that was done before the guidelines were in place, but you still see a good amount of transparency in the window sections there. There is some more infill on the top and bottom, but it is still primarily windows. And then the other house is a screened-in addition, a screened-in enclosure, but that is the same porch configuration as what we see on the house today. Other examples from other historic districts. These two, if I go back. Okay. These two are in the Melrose district. The house on the left does have full glass panels, and so that's really showing that it is primarily transparent material. And then the next house on the right has a good example of an entry door that does have glass on the sides and on the surround, so that shows that you can have a door in that space and that you can have glass surrounding it and still remain that much transparency. And the same with the additional sections of that porch too. That is all staff has. Do you have any questions?
So for clarity, the issue is the back view that we're looking at in our packet with the transom window?
Right, that one and the panel with the door, because the surround of the door would be proposed to be hardy board, and staff is asking for it to be glass.
Okay. I see the door is noted as a 3/4 inch or a 3/4 glass door. Does that give any, I mean, that makes it feel more like a window. Is there any consideration for that?
There could be. Overall, the back wall would probably be the bigger concern, but again, this example on Woodrow Street here on the right side is a better example of keeping as much transparency as possible in a bay with a door on an enclosed porch.
Okay, so you'd prefer to see side lights?
Yes, yeah.
Is the back wall visible from any public right?
It will be, and especially if the rest of the enclosure is transparent as glass, you would see that back wall. There you go.
Through the house, we look at interior walls as opposed to exterior facade.
You would, but it would still be reading as a solid wall in an enclosed space, which is meant to be transparent, as much transparency as possible.
If it helps, the guideline is intended to retain what are regarded as voids in a building, the mass of the building versus the void of the porch, and that's why transparent materials are recommended, so that characteristic is retained.
All right, thank you. Do any other DDRC members have questions for staff? All right, the applicant and any consultants for the project may speak for up to 10 minutes. Is the applicant present?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to speak?
Yes, sir.
Very good, come on up.
Thank you.
Of course. If you would, when you get up to the podium, please state your name and affirm that you swear to tell the truth in these proceedings for the record.
Certainly. My first name is Dmitry. My last name is Kiselev. And my wife and I own the property that we are discussing.
Of course. And just one more procedural issue, and we need it stated for the record. You do swear to tell the truth in these proceedings?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for your time agreeing to review the case. And probably on the contrary of what I'm expected to say, I first of all want to allude to the professionalism of the staff that I have worked with, particularly Elizabeth Kleinfeld, who was a very good communicator. Even though our opinions on what should and should not be done may differ, the staff was excellent, so kudos to them. In order to discuss this, and I will not take more than 10 minutes, the initial idea behind the project is to create an entryway. My wife and I are partial to older houses. That's why when we transplanted ourselves here, we were looking for an older house. And when we found one, we were very happy. But this house does not afford us a place where we can leave our shoes or take our clothes off, etc. So what we decided to do is we decided to make a porch sort of an entryway, right? It's a side porch. And upon consultation with the staff, we reviewed our options, and we reviewed the guidelines that were sent to us, specifically the guidelines, the historic preservation guidelines covering Earlwood Protection Area. And Section 5 of these guidelines, there are like 4 items there. And I don't think that we are in contradiction with any of those, because I wrote it in to support my application, but as far as detracting or obstructing important architectural features of the existing building or around it, especially the principal facade, I'm not going to talk about the specificity of this. In my humble opinion, this is fairly vague, and you can elaborate on it any which way you want to. However, I do not see this. Our application does not contain any proposals of modifying something that would obstruct the view of the property of our house or of any other houses, right? The columns stay untouched. They stay as they are. We are not planning to do any modification on the inside. We don't plan to do any heat source or modify electricity or do anything like that, right? The design addition using material and detailing that are compatible with the original structure. Now that we may also have a few disagreements on. I don't know if you can see it from here. I made a couple of photos and enlarged them for you. Now this is a street view. Can you see?
We can, real quick, have these been provided to staff?
Yes, they should be in the evaluation as well.
Perfect, thank you.
And also this is the view from the side. Now we are talking about brick and hardy plank. Currently we have hardy plank on the back side of the house and on top, right? So the materials that we propose for this renovation, and by the way, this renovation will be done by licensed and bonded contractor, clearly, is hardy plank that's been used on the back. So in my humble opinion, there is consistency over here. We have also, in consideration of the staff recommendations, decided to go ahead and enlarge the size of the window. So our contractor calculated that the total size of the transparent side of this enclosure will be over 66%. What we are really talking about is installing a hanging rack on the back wall, right? And the size of this wall is going to be, it's on the back, and you can see it. It's, what is it? It's 5 by 8. So it's 40 square feet minus a transom window. Now, the floor size would be of this porch is 66 square feet. So if you put like a hanging rack over there and not install a little, and just put a window there, then this whole project doesn't make sense because there is just too small, okay? Also, in consideration of the guidelines, limit the size and scale of an addition so that it is clearly subordinate to the original structure. There is no addition, but everything that we do will be in compliance or in harmony with the additional structure. If we simply put additional brick over there, it's gonna look, may not be a fairly professional term, but to put it would look like a patch. It would look ugly, right? So the only way to do it would be the way that professionals suggested it. To again, mostly enclose it in glass, but the remainder to do a hardy plank siding. And then as far as the recommendation number D, design dormer additions subordinate to blah, 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 it is not applicable to us because we're not doing that. So really, I don't see any contradiction to the guidelines that we were provided. And just the very last thing that I want to say, if I may, is both my wife and I were born outside of the United States, but we come from the cities that are soaked in culture, history, and architecture, beautiful. And we have a deep appreciation of history and the value of historic preservation. And so that is our proposal, is what we come in mind with these kind of ideas and thoughts. We don't want to create an ugly mishmash. We want, but we don't think that what we are proposing would either go against the guidelines or would stand out as a sort of an ugly cousin compared to what we have around us. So with that, we submit to your mercy and ask that you approve it. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to. By the way, the very last thing that I want to say is that the house sits away a little bit from there. It's not right on the road. So when you walk by, you really have to look to see what would be the back wall. It's pretty far, but even that, I don't think that one would be able to see what's in there, frankly. And the porch is going to stay transparent in compliance with the regulations. We're really not doing anything major. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Do any members of the DDRC have questions for the applicant?
Couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Have you considered a freestanding wardrobe to store the clothes and shoes, and thereby being able to put a glass wall there instead? And secondly, is there a consideration to filling in the window? And I'm not sure that would violate anything that in the Historic Preservation Office, but if you fill in that window, you could put the rack on that wall.
We do have a hanging rack inside the house. It's just that what we would like to do is we would like to do it outside of the living room. Are you talking about the, like,
It's built in?
hanging rack in the porch or inside the
Yeah,
house?
I'm talking about the porch is the issue.
Right.
And I understand the statement is you want to put a rack, and that's why you need a solid wall. And my question is, a freestanding rack would not need to be mounted on a wall. And if you used a freestanding rack, you could put glass and satisfy the preservation ordinance.
Absolutely, sir. However, it's going to be a very uneconomical use of space. Again, the porch size is pretty small, and it's going to yield very little space. So if we put a rack over there and comply with the current recommendations, then it's going to take like half of the porch. So it just doesn't make sense. It's just not a very efficient use of space. And I'm sorry, I did not understand the second question.
Well,
Would you rephrase that?
Second question was filling in the window that looks out onto the porch there. If you filled it in, you would have a solid wall to mount your rack. And is there a consideration of that?
Yes, we thought about it. Unfortunately, this is a yeah. It's going to be very dark inside if we do that, because we do not. It is dark in the living room as is. We have two windows that are west east, south, east, and north
Lot
face.
faces north, I
Right,
guess.
and so it's pretty dark. That's why one of the reasons that we want to do, not just simply mesh, but put glass there, is to increase the transparency so that the light can come inside the house. That's the reason.
Well, that's kind of making the staff's point, because the wall that we're talking about is a southern-facing wall, so, all right, well, I think you've addressed my questions, so.
Okay, yeah, most of the light comes from the other two sides currently, because also there is a tree, a huge old tree on the south side, so.
I have a question just for staff on the guidelines. On the point 1, page 2 of the application, the last sentence in that paragraph says, "It has been established that the materials used to enclose porches will be as transparent as possible." Is that a requirement? Is glass or transparency required, or is that an interpretation?
It's the precedent that has been set for other porch approvals, other porch enclosures. In Earlwood, since it's a protection area, it's generally focused on the overall aesthetic rather than specifics in the buildings. But the one major thing for buildings in Earlwood is that we do look at enclosing space. So when we're looking at the precedent that has been set, that enclosing porches is going to remain this balance of voids and solids, and it is going to use transparent materials. That's the precedent that's been set. And then the one thing that we're really looking at the most for Earlwood is enclosing space. So with those two things together, we really have a pretty strong precedent that this is how we interpret these cases.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't pronounce your name. Mr. Kiselev? Kiselev. You know, we appreciate that you are trying to make use of extra square footage in your home for certain purposes. Unfortunately, what you're going to use it for is not in our purview. And okay, so unfortunately, we can't tell you how to use your space. All we can do is comment on the exterior and the components that we talked about that are in the guidelines. So my concern is that you are introducing quite a bit of hardy plank, so it's not creating that void sense. I realize it's a different material from the brick, so that you still see the porch columns, but my concern is that the hardy plank starts to interrupt that sense of void and that sense of transparency. I think, to the point of not recommending what you do with your porch and in the inside, I think that in any sense of the word, blinds can be utilized in windows that are transparent, correct, staff? So there can be privacy created through other means and still satisfy the requirements of the void that is more inherent in glass than it is in hardy plank. My other concern is that I appreciate that you made these windows a little larger and that you put glass in the door. My concern is that those windows, I can't tell if they're exactly like the ones on the front facade or not, and I know they're in a little bit different placement than the ones on the facade, and I have a feeling that that's going to mess up your front facade. Additionally, because it's going to look too much like that front window, but it's not going to be exactly like that front window. And so you're beginning to create yet another thing that may not be in this particular guideline, but it just is going to detract even more from the fact that it needs to be something completely different so that it does not detract from your other window on your facade.
I appreciate your concern, and we have discussed, let me address the window issue. We have discussed with the contractor the consistency and homogeneity of the look. So, yeah, first of all, the window is going to look almost exactly architecturally like this one. If we want to put similar window, there will be less transparency. We can put two windows exactly like this, but they are going to create less transparency than one larger window.
And thereby my point that it should be completely different than that front window so that you get, more transparency like the guidelines recommend, as well as more openness and not adding the party plank enclosure to both the door as well as the windows proposed.
Okay. Would you recommend adding brick? If I were
I don't
to-
believe we can do the brick because then it will be too much like the columns. The
Right.
good thing about your design is that the columns do stand out on their
Totally.
own, but the infill has to also comply with the guidelines, which if they were more of a singular, more like some of those examples that were shown of when the guidelines were in effect, not that window, but that one, right? Those two examples, I don't know if you can show him those two examples, where there's quite a bit more glass surrounded by, and you can see like even in that one on the left, or my left, they have blinds in the windows, but the windows don't look anything like the windows on the house, which is what we would want, for them not to look like the windows on the house.
Okay, thank you for your recommendation. That would completely modify the look. It will look like part of the house for sure if we were to go this way. But that's a concern.
It won't because yours have, this one clearly was part of the house, but you'll have your brick columns, you'll remain, and then you would put the windows in between them, and then thereby it would still look like a porch, which is the purpose, for it to remain looking like a porch,
Right.
but to have glass infill.
Right.
So it would be slightly different than that picture on the left.
Okay. Okay. Well, I certainly want it to keep looking as a porch in consideration of the guidelines. Absolutely. I'm failing to see where we are contradicting the guidelines, but thank you for your recommendation.
Just one question, and then if I may, the contradiction with the guidelines, I think, is that now it's just this totally open space that obviously is transparent, there's nothing there, you see through it. It's clearly an exterior porch. By putting up physical structures, it could somehow block the view and make it look like it's just a separate wing of the house, and I think we want to avoid that. The question is, are you open to, and I don't know how far your conversations with staff have gone, are you open to compromise? And of course, this is something that would need to be discussed with staff, but for example, the rear portion of the side where the door's going, would you be open to adding, I don't know, I'm not an architect, I don't know what the technical terms are, but the glass, the windows flanking the door, so it almost appears as though that entire bay is glass?
Sure.
And if that's the case, would staff be open to I mean, and even at the back, you've got the transom at the top, right? So would staff be open to whether it's hardy plank or whatever, some barrier, I don't know what you want to call it, some non-transparent wall at the back? Because I guess if we can go back to the street views of the subject property, you know, when you're looking through that back bay, I guess aside from the left, where you can see the fence at the back of the yard, which won't be totally obstructed because you have the transoms. And if we can go back to the other picture, the side-by-side, if we're looking at the one on the right, you know, from the right-of-way, you're just seeing brick wall anyways, right? So I guess would staff be open to a compromise if the applicant's willing to put the glass paneling on the back bay, flanking the doors, and having that solid back wall, while understanding that use is not within our purview, you know, you could still put the rack up there if you'd like. Is that, no? I'm seeing head shaking no.
I think the precedent that has already been set with side porches, and it's strong. Additionally, the view through the porch, you know, differs from your perspective where you're standing. And so I don't think that it looks like a solid wall unless you're standing in one certain place, perhaps looking at it, although I appreciate where you're coming from. I think Ms. Sims-Branham's idea of maybe some sort of blinds or something for privacy might be a helpful thing in terms of that piece of it. I know it doesn't answer all questions, but in terms of meeting the guidelines as well as respecting the precedent that we have, that a solid wall there would not be in line with those decisions that have been made previously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the pictures right here in front of us, and if you're the left side picture, if you had a solid wall of hardy plank, to me, you break up the porch. The opposite would be true if on the right side. So like, Amy, your perspective there, where you're standing really matters. So if you're straight at the property, then a solid wall there, I think, would almost give the false sense that that was never a porch.
All right, any other questions, comments from staff or DDRC? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is the first time I'm such hearing. You mentioned that the decision will be made tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, how will I learn of this?
Are you sticking around?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, probably within the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay. 5, 10 minutes. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
we work efficiently here,
All right.
sometimes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this project? Hearing none, I'll open it up for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I recommend denial of the certificate of design approval at 3111 Lakewood Avenue due to it not being in keeping with Section 5 of the Earlwood Protection Area Guidelines.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. If staff will please take a vote.
Ms. Sims-Branham?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Just, I'm sorry to interrupt now, but procedurally, do we want to add to the motion that we could defer it to staff for approval.
That's what we were just talking about.
Okay.
Thank you. So could you amend the motion to include that language, please?
Yes, I'll amend the motion made earlier to allow working with staff if the applicant is open to all the bays being primarily glass. And we'll defer all those other details, if that is the case, to staff.
And I still second that amended motion.
Thank you. Ms. Sims Branham? Yes. Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Mr. Greenberg? Mr. Lee Decker?
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Mr. Salibi?
Yes.
And Mr. Shelton?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, this is 2819 Bratton Street, which is in the Melrose Heights Oak Lawn Architectural Conservation District. And this was a request for certificate of design approval for exterior changes, specifically for changing the siding. This case did come before the DDRC in February 2025. I know several of the commission members were not here at that meeting, so I will be repeating most of it. But at that time, it was deferred by the commission in order for staff to gather additional information. So this is a, This is a 1930s house, which has original wood siding. Staff evaluated the siding in April 2024 and noted that there was some deterioration or rot, which would require replacement. However, most of the damage staff noted was due to poor painting, the buildup of paint over the years without proper scraping, and peeling paint. These are issues that can be mitigated without replacement of historic material. Staff went back to the site after the February 2025 meeting, and staff's findings are unchanged from the findings in 2024. Based on staff's evaluation, the front facade is the only siding that would require areas of replacement materials, large areas. The wood on the side is largely affected by peeling paint, not rot, which is not a valid reason to remove historic material. Historic wood siding is milled from old growth wood. It's higher quality material than modern building materials. It is denser than modern wood and is naturally rot and insect repellent. Emphasis in historic districts is always on the retention of historic materials. These materials can last in perpetuity when they're maintained and repaired, as proved by thousands of historic houses that retain windows, siding, and other wood elements that are over 100 years old. A request for wholesale siding replacement is rare and requires great consideration as it involves removal of a large amount of historic material. The intrinsic qualities of old growth wood is what makes it rare to find historic windows, siding, and other historic wood elements that require wholesale replacement. Based on staff's assessment, the condition of the siding does not necessitate wholesale replacement. Therefore, staff is recommending denial of the request for wholesale replacement of the siding. Speaking on precedent, staff has not found any evidence of DDRC ever approving wholesale siding replacement in any architectural conservation district. This is not something that comes up often. However, staff can handle at staff level small areas of repair and replacing just certain areas of rotted wood. The principles for wood state that where original wood siding exists on a structure, it should be retained. Only if it becomes necessary to replace deteriorated boards, then you should match the replacement to the characteristics of the original. Guidelines for wood also state to retain wooden materials and features, including siding, cornices, brackets, etc. They are essential components of a building's appearance and architectural style. For those of you who were not here last time, the original wood siding on this house is lap siding with mitered corners. This is a distinctive design that is essential to the building's appearance and style. To be in keeping with the guidelines, the siding should be retained and preserved. The guidelines also state that replacement material for deteriorated material should duplicate in size, shape, texture of the original as closely as possible. So based on staff's assessment, the vast majority in the siding is in repairable condition. The siding on the house has years of built-up paint that should be scraped or chemically removed before repainting. But areas of rot that require replacement, which staff has noted are primarily on the front, should be replaced in kind with wood to match the characteristics of the historic wood. Replacing small sections of wood siding with wood to match is a common repair. Wholesale replacement is not necessary and is not in keeping with the guidelines. Just run through this real quick. Sorry. So these are updated photos from staff's visit last month. So you can see on the side of the house, this side particularly, it's in fairly good condition. You can see areas where the paint is flaking off, but it's largely in good shape. The other side has more peeling paint, but it appears to just be peeling paint rather than rot. This is a up-close picture of what peeling paint looks like. It's not attractive, but it can be mitigated. It's already coming off pretty well, and you can see the wood underneath is whole and intact. You have any questions for staff?
Do any DDRC members have questions for staff?
I know you did the site evaluation. Was there a percentage of the exterior that you felt like needed an actual replacement? I know you said the vast majority did not, so I didn't know if there was like a rough percentage there.
Yeah, I mean, the guidelines don't really talk about percentages, so I was trying to stay away from that, but it's part of the front, basically, that would need replacement.
In terms of replacement, instead of using the original, whatever type of hardwood it is, would putty be an acceptable treatment for spot repairs?
Yeah, that's always appropriate for spot repairs. There are definitely some boards that would need to be removed, especially on the front. So putty can only go so far. And there is evidence of past repairs that are failing now. So that, again, that's largely on the front rather than the sides.
Thank you.
So I have a question too about the painting. Let's just assume the applicant goes along with just fixing, repainting, scraping the old paint, repainting. Do we have to say anything about what color that paint is going to be? Or I can't tell if that's original paint or any of that business. Would the applicant need to come back to discuss the color at all?
No, we do not review paint color.
Okay, good.
Any other questions, comments? Great. If the applicant is present, I'd invite them to come up and present the project. Thank you. I believe you've been through this before. If you would, please state your name and state for the record that you swear to tell the truth in these proceedings.
My name is Savannah Martin. I'm the sole owner of 2819 Bratton, and I do swear to tell the truth.
Thank you very much.
So just for the record, too, last month when they came to my house, it was just from the front because I actually wasn't home. So it was only reviewed from the front whenever you could view over my fence. I have a contractor, David Williams, who was actually recommended by one of you on the board. He believes it would be in best interest to replace wholesale, also because you can't tell what the rot is underneath some of the wood. The front is pretty rough. I have like gaping wood in certain areas. David feels pretty strongly it needs to be replaced. One of the minimum recommendations by the staff was hardy board. He did say that we could do, I think it was 0.75 times 7.25 inch hardy plank with the mitering. That was a question from the February meeting. I've been through many contractors. A good majority have believed that it does just need to be replaced. Again, some of the staff, I guess pictures y'all are probably viewing that I'm not privy to, was just what was visible from the front. It was not looking at, more underneath or things from the fence, I guess, over the fence view. And 50% was told to me last year, but that's actually not in the guidelines, so. yeah, just hoping for wholesale replacement based off what contractors have recommended to me. And he does believe he can make it look comparable to what the historic siding is with the mitering.
Well, I'm sorry, are you
Yeah, I mean, I have a PowerPoint, but I don't have it with me, so
sure?
if you have questions.
It's here. Do you want me to click through it?
No, I mean, I presented like everything but the very last slide at the last meeting.
I'd like to click through it if you don't mind, just to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm clicking through.
Yeah, I think I started off with talking about how many contractors I had contacted. Lots of them just kind of failed to follow up, probably because they didn't want to deal with the project if it was just repairs, or deal with the historic district, to be quite frank. Been going back and forth about this for about 13 months now.
I'm sorry, it's just very slow.
So I wasn't at that last meeting in Savannah, so I didn't get to hear all your stuff, but did you get a quote for it repairing the ones that were visibly needing to be repaired and then repainting?
No one has followed up with me. I've had so many people come out to my house, including people from the list. Most people just didn't want to deal with
But I
the
mean,
project.
even the contractor that gave you a quote to replace completely didn't want to give you another quote that would,
He did not, because he feels pretty strongly that it needs wholesale. He came to the last meeting. He was, it's spring break week. A lot of people weren't, are busy. He wasn't able to make it today, but he feels pretty strongly about that. Otherwise, no, I don't have a quote.
you might just ask him, what would the quote be if it were just replacing certain pieces and repainting? I don't know this contractor, but I'd still want to, even though he's recommending wholesale at $25,000, whatever that quote I just saw was.
I think.
It's close to 40,000.
Yeah, to
It's
40,000.
expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive, but I would honestly rather do it right the first time than do it multiple times.
Sure.
Is your reason for wanting to replace the siding, is it aesthetic only? Are you having moisture issues or leaks?
Yes, and multiple people have said that they worry that the underside is more compromised than appears to the naked eye. Multiple people told me that. So I'm a little worried, and there's been mushrooms growing on the front of my house. So I'm a little worried that the damage is more than meets the eye.
And you, like you said, you are amenable to installing the more expensive hardy plank that has the mitered corners and the.
Yeah, because
matching
vinyl's
that
not
look.
allowed, because I tried, my original quote listed, I think on one of the first slides was vinyl. That's a no-no, so, the bare minimum they were willing to have is hardy plank with mitering, and he says he can do the mitering, because that was a question I wasn't certain of last meeting.
Is it appropriate to defer it again to look, well, I know you don't want to.
I say, I really don't want to come back here, if I'm being completely honest. I work a lot, and it's hard for me to do this.
Understood. Would you be open to, and certainly don't want to interject personally too much, I did recently have significant repairs done I've got a detached garage at my house that needed significant work. And they performed the repairs, and it was comparable in amount of materials, and it was $4,500. So relative to a $37,000 price tag, that's certainly something worth considering, and they did a fantastic job.
If you can get them to come out and actually do it, I'm all ears, but I've not had luck, and I've had a lot of people come out. That's why I'm so insistent on getting this done with this guy who's been sticking with me.
So Savannah, did they do forensic kind of looking at, did they take off some boards and really look at it? Or are they just looking at it from the exterior saying this needs wholesale replacement?
Nobody's pulled a board off. There is, actually saw today when I went to walk my dog this morning, there is actually a board that fell off the back. So, I guess you could look at that, but it is on the back side, which the district doesn't care about the back. So the back's kind of up to my discretion. So, no, I've not had anyone do that, but there is a board that you probably could see the underneath right now that just fell off.
I guess along that same line of thinking, but to question staff, has there been any, building science other than the opinion of looking at the outside that says, no, it looks okay? Or is there?
Staff's recommendation last time was to do a test panel of taking off siding. I do not think the contractor was willing to do it. So that was staff's recommendation, but
So the only professional opinions we have is to wholesale replace. Is that correct?
well, and staff.
Okay. But I guess in terms of a building construction related opinion.
We are qualified to evaluate historic wood.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it true, though, that staff, that y'all couldn't get around to the rest of the house and only saw the front?
We
Or-
couldn't. The photos you saw were over the fence. You can see it.
And that was known before they came out.
So, yeah, you can see it. I mean, you can tell what's going on just by looking at it.
I guess, Hunter, it was the point of your question to understand, has anyone evaluated the material underneath to see if wholesale replacement is actually warranted because there's potential damage underneath?
Right. I just want to understand if we've gone deeper than, I guess, looking from outside, yeah. And understanding that there are leaks inside leads me to think that, a patch, I wouldn't want to recommend a patch replacement and a repainting and continue to have failure issues, so.
Yeah, and that's a fear. Multiple contractors did just verbally tell me that once they get in, if we do, just say we say, yes, we do the repair. If it's worse than once you get in there, then what do you do? Do you go back to the district? Like where do you proceed? And that's a question I've had, and that's another reason why I'm so insistent on getting it just done right the first time.
Well, just to ask the question, are you amenable, if it is a building performance issue, are you amenable to replacing wholesale with wood siding to match the original?
I don't have a quote saying that. I am a sole homeowner. It's $40,000 as is. It just depends on the cost. I've been saving up a while, but that's not a small amount of money.
Staff would not recommend that anyway, so if you were to allow for wholesale replacement, we would recommend hardy plank. The reason it's stressing to keep the original wood is because the original wood is good material. That's
Oh, the old growth.
That's what makes these buildings last for hundreds of years. So we would not recommend replacing with all new wood. That would, yeah, not be good.
Thank you, okay.
Just out of curiosity, in a situation like this, how is one to evaluate, for like in past cases, applications, if there is a concern that the structure of the home beyond the facade is damaged, how do you determine that without destroying the historic materials? I mean, I'm sure there are ways to remove planks without damaging them, right? To assess the underneath?
Yeah, that's pretty common. I mean, typically with big projects that are looking at a lot of siding replacement, they'll do the Bailey bill. And, we write it in the stipulations. If you're finding more deterioration, once you get into it, please contact staff and we will reevaluate, basically. I can't tell you any time that's actually happened because most of the time it's fine. But it is what we typically recommend.
Good.
Does the staff know of a contractor who would be willing to, who has done some other work that you could refer the client to?
She did try some contractors on the
I've
list
tried
that we
so many.
provided. Definitely sympathize with that. Personally, I am having troubles getting people at my house too as a single homeowner. It's hard. It just takes a little extra work to find the right person. David has been communicative with her. I think he was recommended by another property owner. He's done work in the historic district. I have never approved any work where he's actually working with historic material.
At the February meeting, it sounded like David was open to repairing, but he just would not guarantee longevity of the work, correct?
Again, yes, I don't have a quote though stating that, and I don't have like proof to show you that. But yes, theoretically, but he strongly recommends against that. And I've had other contractors do that too, but again, nothing to prove to you because they've ghosted me. So no one has wanted to touch my house. I mean, I've been doing this since March of 24. So been trying for months and months. No success, no luck.
Sorry, I'm just trying to think of a pragmatic way to approach this. Is there, if we were to, could we approve a motion to allow repairs contingent upon the applicant finding a contractor who's willing to do those repairs? And if so, would that need to come back to DDRC, or can we like pre-approve repairs just for the time being? Well, I mean, I don't know how my fellow council members are going to move or what they're going to recommend, how they're going to vote, but just trying to kind of, because I'm sympathetic to the fact you've been working on this over a year. And so to give you some I don't know, clarity on how to move forward, just so you're not stagnant at this point.
But let me tag on to that. I mean, we don't have to approve repairing.
No.
That wouldn't even come before, you see what I'm saying? If they were just repairing, if she was just doing forensics and repairing, that wouldn't even be something she needed to come before us because that meets the guidelines.
Understood. Thank you.
I guess my only question is if you do not approve it today, may I ask formally to get someone else through the district to work with me? Because I've not had the same pleasure that Mr. Kislin has had with great communication and professionalism. It's just true.
I don't believe we have the authority to rule on that.
It's just a simple ask because I've not had the greatest working relationship.
Well, and again, I think when you are working with staff, I think you're interfacing with an individual employee, but I don't think these decisions are made in a vacuum.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that I'm not privy to the inner workings of staff, but I think that when an application comes in while you're interfacing with one particular employee, they're not siloed. They're conversing with other staff members.
I've dealt with mainly one, and like I said, I've just not had a great rapport, poor communication, poor professionalism. So I would prefer to work with someone else if the motion is to either defer or deny.
I think you could ask.
I've asked, I just haven't had any luck.
Yeah, this is not within the purview of the commission. But I will note, I've been out twice too with Rachel to look at the house. So you're correct, the decisions aren't made in a vacuum. So.
Any other comments or questions from
I got
DRC
one last
members?
question, then that'll be it for my questions. Is there, I guess, is there such a motion where we could approve replacement contingent upon it being the 3/4 inch hardy plank that's miterable and, with the details that match the existing, or, I guess, repair? Could we have a two-part, either repair or replace wholesale with something that matches? No?
So the request is for wholesale replacement. So if you're going to allow it, yes, specify what needs to be used as the replacement material. But if you're recommending that repairs be done rather than replacement, I'm recommending denial. And I think it goes back to what Ms. Sims-Brandon was saying, with that staff can't approve repairs at staff level. So if that is all the scope of work, that it's going to be repairs, then we don't need the DDRC to make a motion on that.
I hate to keep throwing out hypotheticals and contingent scenarios, but could we pass a motion, or I guess we could do anything. Would staff be okay with us passing a motion to approve the certificate of design approval contingent upon a review of the, work with me, what do you call it, underneath the facade, that if it were significantly or materially damaged, then to allow the wholesale replacement to go forward? Which I think is my understanding of the guidelines, right? Like if the interior is so damaged that repairs aren't feasible, then we would allow wholesale replacement. Is that right?
Yes, again, that's something that staff could approve.
Sure. I guess, back to you, it would take the contractor working with staff to actually, remove however many exterior boards it would take to get a fair assessment of the underneath. And so, I mean, you said that's, although Rachel, did you say earlier that's never been done? Or I guess.
Are you talking about like what do they call it, demolition?
Yeah, we do like investigatory demolition, which doesn't mean demolition, it just means removing enough material to get a good idea of what's going on underneath. And that's what Rachel had recommended earlier.
And y'all have actually put that into practice before? You have done that before?
Yeah, I mean, it's typically done with historic buildings, and like I said, it's always recommended in the approvals that staff writes, that if more deterioration is found, blah, 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 then you need to come back to staff and we'll reassess. So.
So that's the
Yeah,
part that
that's
has not
normal.
been done at
No,
this
that has
juncture.
not, that has not been done, no.
So we can recommend it, but they already recommended it and it hasn't been done.
Yeah, and I got the
What I'm
impression
hearing.
from David, he wasn't really wanting to do that.
Well, I guess if there's no other path forward, then, right, I mean, he works for you.
He works for me, but if he says no, then I'm back at square one. And I'm
Sure.
really tired of being there. That's where I've been for the past 13 months.
Understood.
So. I tried, yes, but no one was willing to commit to the project. So I have been through so many people. People in my neighborhood just ghost me. I was willing to try. I mean, I even posted in the Facebook group. I believe Josh recommended David. He's, the only one that has stuck with me. So at this point, I'm kind of at this discretion of him. To me, he is the professional here. If he says do it, do it. I mean,
That's where I'm struggling, is that we have a construction professional, an expert who has an opinion that differs with city staff. And so how are we supposed to balance those opposing views? I mean, it sounds like the applicant herself worked to do a repair, but has been unable to get anyone to do the work. The contractor she's engaged with has recommended against that.
yeah, I've had kind of mixed bag of opinions, but I've tried.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's common that most contractors don't know how to work on historic buildings. That's really common. Most are doing new construction, new houses. We come across that a lot, that the contractors, people are engaging, don't actually know anything about historic materials. So that's why staff went out to evaluate. That's why staff has to evaluate these things rather than taking the word of contractors.
But it's beyond just work on historic material, it's potential water damage underneath the exterior of the home, correct?
Yes, again, that's a common thing that comes up with repairs.
That's why you have to do the investigatory demolition.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know you have that problem until you see the evidence of it.
Yeah, I think until that step is done, then in my opinion, I would not be able to make a good recommendation of wholesale approval, a wholesale replacement or repair without that step being done. I mean, we need that information to make a good judgment call. And I personally do know her contractor. I was the one that recommended it to you. I know he won't be spooked away by an extended timeline. I know it's frustrating. I know it's been going on for a long time. But if you're wanting to get, a solid decision from DDRC on which direction you're going to go, you really probably need to step through that step and get that investigation done so we can see if there is damage underneath the siding. Until we get that, we're not going to be able to make a good judgment call on wholesale replacement or not.
And let me ask, if we were to make a motion to approve contingent upon an investigatory analysis, pardon me, I forgot what you called it exactly, but if we were to make it contingent upon that investigation to staff's satisfaction that wholesale replacement is necessary, again, it being contingent upon what, all deference to staff. So they don't have to perform this investigation and then come back yet for another meeting. Is that?
Yeah, I think staff, would you recommend another deferral to allow that? Or would you say, make a motion contingent on that investigation showing?
So again, if that investigation shows that the house needs wholesale replacement, staff can approve that at staff level. So.
And you would know to what extent the damage had, I mean, in other words, don't say like 50% needs to be, I mean, you will be able to, after they do the forensics look at the selective demo, to look at it, then you'd be able to determine whether they only did it in a certain portion or they did it all over. I mean, y'all deal with that kind of thing every day, I guess is what I'm saying.
We do.
Yeah, I agree that step needs to take place.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if it was my house, I would want whatever contractor ended up scraping the paint and doing the work to put, a 1-year warranty on his work. So can we somehow put that in there that as part of the investigation, certainly we defer to staff's opinion, but part of it needs to be, some contractor agrees to stand behind the work.
I don't think he's going to do that.
So if he won't sign that, I think we need to keep
But he
wholesale
hasn't
replacement on
done
the table.
any investigative work, Hunter. That's the thing I'm
Exactly, but I say,
concerned about.
do the investigative work, and then if there's still maybe a disagreement of opinion, I would want somebody to stand behind a warranty.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know that y'all can,
Yeah, I don't
that's
think that's
within
in
your
our purview,
purview.
that we
No.
could force a contractor on that.
No, but
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to agree to that because that's been a huge issue and that's what he's said over and over. That's why he wants wholesale replacement. And I know he is against the forensic demolition, but I mean, I can try, but again, I can't guarantee that he's going to proceed. So then I'm back at square one all over again. And the house, there are certain areas of rot. I mean, it's very obvious, whether or not it's 50% or not. It's pretty obvious the front's pretty rough. And the front has been recommended for probably over 50% replacement, if not more than that.
Any other questions or comments from members of DDRC? Thank you very much. All right, now we'll open it up to members of the public if they would like to come up and speak on the project. All right, any other deliberation, comments, questions from DDRC members?
I just want to maybe go on the record to say that when we are proponents of you having some forensic work done ahead to be sure that you actually need wholesale replacement, it's because we're looking out for you as the homeowner and the applicant, not because anyway, I just want you to understand it's because we want you to have to only pay what you need to pay for the great, beautiful, wooden, historic home that you have. So just wanted to go on the record to say that.
Yeah, and I'll add, as you mentioned, Rachel, during your thing, there's been, from a history standpoint of preservation staff and DDRC, they've not approved wholesale replacement on the building before. So this is fairly unprecedented if we were to make that decision. So the more information we have to make that decision is, to me, pretty vital. So that's why we're deliberating pretty heavy here, because there is no historical precedence here.
A quick question for staff. Apologies. The hypothetical contingent motion I asked about earlier, that's not necessary. If y'all go out there for the investigation and you determine that wholesale replacement is warranted, it doesn't need to come before DDRC, or does it?
Right, yeah. It
Okay.
would not need to come back.
Thank you.
But to confirm, we don't have to make a motion to say that.
You do not.
We just deny, we would just make a motion to deny, and then if she wants to work with staff with the replacement component, then they could approve it. Yeah.
All right, I'll open it up for a motion.
Okay, well, I guess I'll make the motion to deny the certificate of design approval for the exterior change to 2819 Bratton Street, which is in the Melrose Heights Oak Lawn Architectural Conservation District, based on the district guidelines.
Second?
All right, will staff please take a vote?
Ms. Sims Branham?
Yes.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Mr. Greenberg? Mr. Ledecker?
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Mr. Salibi?
Yes.
And Mr. Shelton?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, so the next case is 725 Olive Street. This is in the Oakwood Court Architectural Conservation District. And this is a request for certificate of design approval for an addition, which also involves making exterior changes to the building. This is a two-story house. It was built around 1916 and on a large lot in the Oakwood Court neighborhood. Sorry. The house is very simple in its form and design. It includes original 1/1 windows, square porch posts, and a hip roof with wide eaves. The house has been covered in, you're going way too far. Sorry. The house has been covered in vinyl siding, and the front door has been replaced, but otherwise the house is fairly intact. The early Sanborn maps actually show that this house and the one next door were basically the same when they were first built. They both had, were very rectangular. They had a 2-story back porch and a 1-story full-width front porch. The house next door has had a few additions on it. This one remains pretty much intact, except the 2-story back porch is no longer intact. So the current proposal is for an addition, which is attached to the rear of the house, with a 2-story portion closest to the existing house, and an extension into the yard to the right beyond the right wall of the house. You can see it here in the site plan. The hatch is where the addition is proposed to be located. The proposed addition is large in scale, does not show differentiation from the existing house, and it does obscure the original form of the house. Also to note, the proposal does include removing the vinyl siding that is currently on the house, which is not an issue. However, if there was original siding underneath, they would need to retain it. And again, that's one thing that staff would need to assess once the vinyl siding is removed. The proposal also involves moving or changing original windows on the left side of the house. The applicant did provide several examples of houses in the district that have side wings, side additions, side porches, and carports, which are attached to the side of the house. There are pictures of each of those in your packets. However, the vast majority of the examples provided were original 1-story side porches or wings. Additionally, the houses that have those 1-story side wings tend to be neoclassical or colonial revival in style, which is common to have a central block side wing plan. This house is not colonial revival. It does not have a central block side wing plan. Most of the characteristics kind of more or less fall in line with more of a craftsman style. All right, so the guidelines state to site additions so that they do not detract from or obstruct, obstruct important architectural features of the existing building or others around it, especially the principal facade. Yes, so you can see from the front elevation, the original house is on, or the house as it is now, is on top, and the addition as seen from the street is on the bottom. The 2-story portion of the addition is proposed to be extended to the right of the house beyond the right wall of the original house. This, as I stated, the form of the house is a very simple form. It's one of the defining features of the home. The earlier houses built in this district tend to follow this same pattern as being very boxy, 2-story houses with a 1-story front porch. It's very, there's only a handful of those in Oakwood Court. They tend to be on the dead-end streets like Olive or Holly. Those were built earlier than the colonial revival houses that you see in the heart of the neighborhood, I guess. So it's a distinctive form. So the form of the house is a defining feature. The addition does not differentiate from the original, or differentiate the original from the new, and it completely alters the form of the house. As stated in the principles for additions, additions should serve to reinforce and not detract from the existing architectural form and design of the building. So staff finds that the location of the addition detracts from the original house and is not in keeping with this guideline. The second guideline states to design additions using materials and detailing compatible with the original structure. So the proposed left elevation shows that the windows on the left side of the house will be altered. You can go to the next slide. The original windows have a very regular pattern. There are 4 windows on each side of the sides of the elevation. The new left elevation shows that the rear 2nd-story window would be altered to a slightly larger size, slightly different orientation. You can see the existing on the top and the proposed on the bottom. You can see how the windows change a bit. The principles for additions state that additions should not detract from the existing architectural design of the building. Changes to the original windows and original window rhythm is not compatible with the details of the house, nor is it in keeping with district standards that require original windows to be retained rather than replaced, and that's in section 6-2. So staff finds that the proposed windows and changes to the original windows are not in keeping with the guidelines. The last guideline for additions state to limit the size and scale of an addition so it is clearly subordinate to the original structure. So I do not have measurements of the addition, but looking at the site plan, it appears to be about the same length as the house, with the porch and the main mass of the house combined. The width of the addition is roughly 10 feet more than the original house. As we discussed, it extends out to the right. And the addition on the left side is on the same plane as the existing house. So there is no differentiation between the addition and the original house. So it fully obscures the form of the original house. The applicant has expressed desire to change the configuration of an interior staircase and the desire for more space in the backyard as a reason for the addition butting out to the side. However, the arrangement of interior floor plans is not within the purview of the DDRC, and the large lot does have ample space behind the house for an addition to be accommodated. Additionally, the house is located on the far left side of the lot, leaving a large amount of space beside the house for a yard. Changing the directional expression of the addition should not use up more yard space. It would just use the yard in a slightly different way. You go forward a little bit. So this is merely just to show roughly where an addition could go and where DDRC has recommended additions go in the past. This is not an example of what the addition should look like, but it is just more or less showing the space where an addition could go to be in keeping with the guidelines. So staff finds that the proposed addition at 725 Olive Street is not in keeping with Section 5 of the Oakwood Court guidelines and recommends denial.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the DDRC? All right. If the applicant is present, we would invite them up to speak to the project. And you all have been here, so if you would please state your name and swear to tell the truth in these proceedings.
Kate Cronus, I swear.
Thank you. Did staff get that for the record? Name? Was it loud enough?
Okay, just to be quick because it's been a long meeting. We chose to move to the Shannon area because we were excited about the walkability and the community. Oh, over here. And when we were looking at houses, a lot of them already had an addition on them that already took up the entire lot, especially over in the Shandon side. So we're pretty excited to find this house. But before we purchased it, it really only has 4 rooms in it right now. It's almost like a 4 square, but it's like half of one. And so when we looked at it, we knew we would want to do an addition. So we thought pretty hard before we put an offer in on whether we thought we'd be able to. The first hurdle was with the layout. Rachel mentioned the stairs. They run down the back wall of the house from kind of one side to the other. So to pass from the existing house to an addition, you would have to pass along the far left wall, which is the one right on the property line. And that's kind of your only way to get from front to back. And so then with, if you try to do an addition straight back from there, the main things we're trying to add are a workable kitchen. My husband cooks a lot, and he does some catering for family and friends. So kitchen was important to us. A first floor bedroom. We're lucky to have 3 sets of grandparents that are still with us, our parents. So we want a first floor area when folks come to visit. And then a screen porch. And so those are the 3 things we're trying to get on there. And to lay those out in a line, you either have to walk past a bedroom to get to the other communal spaces, or and while you do that, you're adding more square feet because you need a hallway that whole length. Other things we thought about, our house is pretty narrow. So if you think about other 4 squares, especially in the Shandon area, they're a good bit wider than ours. If you look at the front, there's like a window, the door's in the middle, and a window on the right. We kind of don't have that whole right part. So it's narrow. It's even narrower than the one right next door to us that was very similar. I think it's about 6 feet narrower. So that was another hurdle. And then the other thing we thought about before putting an offer in was that it's in the historic district. And so we reviewed the guidelines, we walked around the neighborhood to see what have other folks done. And if I just think about our street, for example, there's 6 houses on it. The one across from us has not had any changes that we know of, but has also been vacant for several years. One is a new build. The 2 on either sides of us have really large carports, I think, as you can see from the pictures, that are set right up in line with the front of the properties. And one of them has a little side addition. And then the last house has an addition very similar to what we're planning that runs off the back of the property and out to the side. So that's, before we put the offer in, we did look at the guidelines, we looked at the area, we walked around to see how other folks have approached this. Spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to build something that'd be functional, minimize our footprint on the lot, that's really important to us, and then also met the spirit of the guidelines. Just a couple comments from the staff items just to make sure we're all thinking about the same things. Is on the back of the house right now, the side that's on the property line, there's already, I believe, been a change to that piece of the house where that's been built out already. So we've already lost that line of where the existing house was. So as far as differentiating, that's already gone. And then same story for that window that says we're moving. That window I don't think is original either. It would have fallen outside of the existing house on the first floor there. So just things we're thinking about. And then we looked at the form of the box. I think Rachel's phrasing for our architecture style is boxy, which I agree with. And so that was part of what we thought about when we designed the addition. We made a boxy addition to follow the form, set it as far back as we could. I think the only other 2 comments I think I had, 3 maybe. One, we thought really hard about the principal facade. We're trying not to change anything on the very front of the house, obviously. And then the window where the side of the house along the lot line where the window spacing that's proposed would be not in that kind of same format as the rest of the house is set at the back on the property line, 4 feet from a fence and 3 feet from our neighbor's garage. So I don't know if that matters or plays in, but things we were thinking about. And then the comment that changing the layout wouldn't take up more yard space. It would, you can take the rectangle and lay it out that way, but when you try and put all the pieces in it that go in a house, you can't lay them out in a straight, narrow rectangle in the same way. You need more hallways, more of that. I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from members of DDRC for the applicant or staff?
I have a question. So appreciate your explanation. So the things you wanted to add were all first floor additions, but it looks like your addition is a 2-story. What's going on the 2nd story?
Yeah, we are adding 1 bedroom in the upstairs. We're open to that one you can see from the street view. That could be a 1-story if that's more in keeping. We thought the 2-story was more boxy in keeping with the form, but open to your recommendations.
That was my question, was would you consider a single-story addition, or would that be more in keeping with the wording of the ordinance about, being subservient to the original architecture? Could you still, meet all your goals without seeing the two-story thing side by side from the front?
Certainly. If we can keep the 2-story that's in line with the house right now, but get rid of the part off to the side, yes.
Right, I think that's really the major issue with looking at that front facade and seeing another 2-story piece attached to it, is the part that's not making it subservient to, and we're not even looking at some of the examples you sent. They're all 1-story appendages, so to speak, or sides, rather than a 2-story. And then that would allow you to do your majority of the 2-story perhaps behind the original box, but not in line with the box. It's got to be either has to have a hyphen, right? Or either it needs to be recessed back. So we've seen a couple of different ways that that's handled, but it cannot be in line with the house, the original house.
Even though we've already lost where the original house ended.
And so is the 2-story, is that vertical line from the front yard, that's not the original house?
On the the right side where the addition is going.
Yeah, just looking at this picture. So
You want the second story there to be inset. Yes, we could do that.
So I think what she's talking about is, can you see the Sanborn map?
Yeah.
The part that kind of juts out around the two-story porch. So that two-story porch, at least it's been altered, it's been enclosed somehow. So there is kind of like a jut out on that side. Again, this is,
Pretty well.
yeah.
That's the left side of this picture?
Again, this is talking about siding. If they take the vinyl siding off, it's going to tell them a lot. They're going to see if, like, it's probably likely that on that left side, the one window on the bottom is not original. I think Katie mentioned that. But when you take off that siding, you're going to see that there's a void there, and that was original window or not. So if that's not the original back of the house, I would imagine there's not going to be siding there. So again, it's kind of the cart before the horse, but it would be interesting to see without the vinyl siding, and that would tell us a lot more. So that doesn't really help you guys.
Well, I guess my question, so the right side of the photo, though, is the original side of the house of what's on our screens?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Sanborn map, it seems pretty similar in form. You can, I'm trying to.
Yeah, the right side, I don't think there's ever been any changes to.
And that's the side that the addition would be seen from?
Yeah, you can see in the
Yeah, I see
aerial
that
there's-
hip added to the side, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds, can I ask you, are you willing to come back perhaps and do some of these changes that the staff is recommending?
Certainly willing to work. The initial discussion, I think, was like that going out to the right, we lose that back right corner of the house. And I think that was kind of the showstopper from when we had our initial discussion. So I think if we could get approval to have the first floor addition to the right, I think that would be the bulk of this, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so y'all know how we approve additions in the past. We typically recommend an inset, so that's what you were talking
Right.
about with the hyphen. I work with their drafts person that they're using. We work with her all the time. We have a good working relationship, so we could talk about that. But I think if you're going in the direction of what staff is saying is that there's not really differentiation between the old and the new. We don't have that inset that we typically require. They would basically have to redesign.
Right, that's kind of what I'm feeling like. That's
Yeah.
why it feels like a deferral to me. If you're willing to make these changes, I don't think we could I don't feel comfortable saying we approve it and work with staff on all that redesign because it seems like quite a bit of redesign.
Is it the hyphen that we were talking about two sides of the house, I think. So the hyphen we're talking about is on the lot line side of the house. Is that where we are now?
You can say.
Yeah, I'm talking about on the lot, on the side, the left side,
Yeah.
when you're facing the front. The left side that looks like it's in line with,
Yeah.
either it needs to be set back or it needs to have a definition that shows you where the original house is, which we assume is where it's showing it right now based on some
Well, I think
other
we're
potential.
assuming that's where there's already been a change to it.
I think the major change is the removal of the two-story porch, so it's kind of hard to tell where that, I think part of it was enclosed, you know, you have to do investigative demolition to be able to tell for sure. But just looking at the Sanborn map, and the way the house does kind of jut out a little bit in the back, the same as it does in the Sanborn map, I wouldn't be surprised if that was original, just because the Sanborn map looks the same.
So the lot line didn't come up, I don't think, when we met with you ahead of this, which is fine. But when we had the first discussion, I don't think that was one of the concerns. Not saying it can't be now.
So staff's main concern and the way we've approved things in the past is to make sure that you have your original corners of the house. So talk about insetting a little bit from the sides to be able to preserve those corners, so you know that this house was this box house. That's what it was. It was this box, and then we added on this portion. So that is always staff's recommendations for agendas. I'm sorry if I didn't articulate that clearly.
And hard to tell from the aerial, that is visible from the right-of-way?
It is. They do have a massive carport next to them.
Is massive.
Yes.
I'm a husband. I was just going to say that that side of the house is heavily obscured by about a 1,300 square foot carport that's immediately next to it, and then a fence. So you really, unless you're like standing in that edge, eyeing down it, you can't even see that back corner.
Carport and garage.
Yeah, and a garage behind that.
Understood. I guess that's maybe, I mean, are we putting the cart before the horse? Because to me, understanding the need for a hyphen if it's visible from the right-of-way, the portion that juts out to the right of the house is the big issue here. Am I misunderstanding? I guess they're both issues, but is one bigger than the other?
I mean, staff's recommendation is always to inset from the corner, so I don't.
Even if
know how
not
you
visible
would do
from the
that.
right-of-way?
Well, no, if it's not visible from the right of way, none of us have purview. So it will be visible from the right of way just as much
Yeah,
as
I mean,
any
I guess
other.
looking here, if you are on the street, not directly in front of the house, but directly in front of the 1,300 square foot carport, you can see I guess whether it's the original corner or not, don't know, but you can see the corner from the right of way.
Can I add something in here? I mean, it seems like there's a pathway here, probably through a deferral and a redrawing. If they were to reset, so we're going to go off to the right side of that, like they originally planned, but we're not going to go all the way up to the front of the existing corner, right? We're going to reset it back a little bit. Would the ideal be that that is two-story or one-story? Because I know that your concern was you want the one-story to flow better because you have some ideas there. So you would like more square essentially back there. Maybe it's going to L, or I don't know if the right term there is that for that, but to me, it sounds like they can go out to the right a little bit if they're willing to come off of the front of the house a little bit. Whether that's a one-story or two-story, I guess would be up to y'all's review. And then, but the bulk of the addition should come off the back of the house.
Yes. When you're talking about coming out to the side, are you talking about coming out the side right at that front corner or that back corner?
Come
Sorry.
off of that corner a little bit, so that original corner is still defined of the house.
So,
Yeah.
I know floor plans are kind of not in our purview, but I don't think that would achieve what they want to achieve. The stair is right there at that back corner. So if they wanted the stair to come out straight to the side, they basically have to put an addition right there. So it would obscure the corner.
But the other portion of it is when you were looking at the front facade, that it's a two-story element that detracts from the original structure. So whether it's setback, L or whatever, I think what we're seeing in some of these additions is one-story
One-story.
appendages, so to speak, from the
The
front
one-story
facade that doesn't.
Yeah. So one story would be preferred, right? If you're going off to the right of the house.
Well, so, sorry, staff doesn't normally recommend side additions just because when you're looking at the front of the house, you just want to see that as the historic streetscape. We have, I think, in the past, not counting the ones that are listed that were obscured by vegetation, and they're not anymore, you can see them. But we have allowed for like a hyphen and then coming out a teeny bit wider if you're really far back on the property. Again, that involves making sure you still see those corners of the original house. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I guess, are y'all open to, and I'm not considering cost here because I recognize what I'm about to say is probably going to add cost to this project, but if the stairs are the blocker, would you be willing to explore adjusting the stairs so that you get, if the addition's going to come off the back of the house to preserve those original corners, would y'all be open to that, I guess?
I think before we bought the house, we read the guidelines. There's nothing in the guidelines that says we want to keep the four corners, which obviously I don't have the purview into how y'all interpret the guidelines. So that was a tough part because that thought isn't in there. It's just keep the form, keep the structure. I don't know what the specific words were. do not detract from. But we're open to the 6-inch inset. We could do that. It's going to make a weird jag in our kitchen counter, but that's not impossible for us. We're open to a 1-story off to the right. That doesn't harm us. But the move in the stairs is a little tougher, I think. And not just from a cost, we also value, it's a cool old home. We think that is an interesting thing. And the main thing the house has in it is a 2-story fireplace that runs up the middle. So we've got 4 fireplaces in it, and we're keeping those same 4 rooms as they are, which I think is kind of the cool historic part, even though someone's already knocked the chimney off the top. So that's a bummer, but.
Question for staff. What's the word? The addition shouldn't detract from the original design. I know we've talked a lot about keeping the 4 physical corners, but could you do that by using different materials?
Typically,
And I don't know if the applicant would be open to that, but just,
well, again, they would probably want to side their addition in hardy board, and we don't know what's under the vinyl, so that's kind of a question. Materials is not always what we would recommend. Just going off of the guidelines, I'd say to keep the form.
Sure.
That really doesn't address that.
I mean, I guess I think about, like, if I'm walking around downtown Charleston, for example, and I'll admit, it looks a little wonky, but you've got these historic homes with this massive addition to the back, and somehow they've approved it by, and I understand all guidelines are drafted differently, but like you have this extremely modern addition in the back that's probably double the size of the original historic structure, and that's how they distinguish, is by using different materials. So I'm just
Yeah, our
wondering if that's a
guidelines are
possibility.
written different. I don't know what the guidelines in Charleston state specifically. They don't, okay. But our guidelines do specifically say to design additions using materials and detailing compatible with the original structure. So it kind of precludes making something really modern.
Currently, it's yellow vinyl. There's a section where maybe there's wood, or I don't know, so.
Thank you to both.
So the additions state, the principles of the additions state that while additions are permitted, they should serve to reinforce and not detract from the existing architectural form and design of the building. And they also state they need to be clearly subordinate to the original structure. That typically involves, as past interpretations of the guidelines set the precedent, involves in setting it and making sure that it can't be subordinate if you don't know it's an addition. So if there's no differentiation between the addition and the house, it's not subordinate. So that's why we typically recommend the inset on the corners to protect the form and to make sure that you can see the old and new, and so it's clearly subordinate.
And part of the problem is that for every addition that we have ever reviewed and processed, that has been a requirement in terms of keeping that form. So there's a very strong precedent here, unless there's a very exceptional situation. I can remember one we permitted in Elmwood Park where it came out a few feet to the left of the original building, but that was because there was absolutely no place behind to build. It was, the back lot line was right up against the house. So that was the circumstance in which it was acceptable to come out a little bit to the side to give them a little extra room. But just so you know what it is staff is struggling with in terms of trying to figure out how to give them extra room while meeting the guidelines. You know, it's a very strong precedent. So.
Yeah. Just to defend Rachel just a second, I think the only reason she used the word corner was because she was trying to explain what the form is, not that it was written in the guideline. So I think that's, when I back up when we were talking, it was about explaining to the applicant that that the form meant the corners.
Right, and typically, we're not talking about lots of space. I know that's not really the issue, I think, right here. Typically, we've even brought people in 8 inches, to give them maximum room, but still to preserve those corners so that 50 years from now, when somebody comes walking down the street and they look at this house, they understand what the original form looked like.
Right.
Yeah.
But to the precedent, we do have 5 in here that have precedent of approval, I think.
Yeah, some of those are just approvals of additions. Do you have the thing?
Yeah, not asking to litigate their own. Sorry.
What did he say? What did he say?
He just needs to see they didn't have any of
The packet?
And while they're reviewing the application, compatible materials, I mean, it doesn't say it has to be the same materials. I keep getting back to this. And what Amy said a second ago brought this up in my mind, or made me think about, in 50 years, someone walking down the street, looking at the house, I guess, and again, to try and not harp too much on the 4 corners language, I think if the materials are compatible yet different and can clearly distinguish the original structure from the addition, I think to Amy's point, you would still be able to tell, I mean, I guess you wouldn't be able to see the back of the house anyways, but you would still know where the original structure ended and the addition begins. So I'm wondering, it's vinyl siding now. Hardy plank, I guess, looks very similar. So would you really be able to distinguish? And that probably wouldn't be appropriate. But I guess, just kind of thinking out loud here, would brick, not suggesting you'll do that. I know it can be cost prohibitive and frankly, it might look a little, again, wonky. But like, would brick be appropriate? Right? Where, I guess, compatible, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I would not say that brick was compatible with this house. It doesn't, I don't even know that the foundation has brick, is it? It does have some brick, okay. But, it's common to have a lap-sided addition off the back of a brick house. I can't imagine anyone doing a brick addition off the back of a,
Sure.
I mean, that's pretty cost prohibitive anyways, which is why we allow for siding to go on brick houses like that. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what 2 materials you could use, like hardy plank and.
If we
Well,
have
most
the-
importantly, didn't I hear you say you're okay with setting it back a bit?
We're on 2 sides. So if we stay on the right side, if we were okay with the 1-story addition, then the
Let's talk
second
about the
story,
left
we
side.
could set it back and we'd keep that corner at the top.
The left side?
Yes, we can bump that in.
See, I'm hearing
6
her say they're
inches
okay to
as
pull
needed.
it back is what I'm,
Oh,
There's
sorry.
2 sides. We're on 2 sides.
This whole conversation in my mind has been geared towards the right side.
oh,
Yeah, sorry.
sorry.
So
And
for
my
that-
understanding is, and maybe I'm wrong, the staircase is on the left side.
It's on the back right.
Right.
It's
Back
on the
right,
right,
so
it's on the corner we're
along the
talking
driveway.
about.
No, it's here.
So, I mean, the real issue is the massing associated with going off to the
Yeah, so I
right.
was-
And the preference is to go to the rear. So if we were to go to the right, it needs to definitely be distinguishable from the 4 corners and subservient to the main building and not be the current massing that it's going to add to the building. That's a big concern, right? So that's,
That is, yes.
If it was 1 story, and so then the second, it's smaller in scale, and then the second story, if any other second floor addition was off the back and inset, that would keep that corner at the second, that's the ceiling light height, basically, the roof line. CPA, not an architect, at the roof line. So would that help with the corner considerations?
Well, I think we could discuss it all day long about what you could do, but I think the reality is you need to do something to redesign it to meet the guidelines that what we're seeing today. So I don't know that we have the exact, this is what you need to do that. which is why I'm leaning towards deferring it for you to be able to work through all those details with staff to meet the requirements.
Yeah, I would recommend that as well, to defer, have your architect work with staff to figure out a different way to mask that addition on the property.
Yeah, I want to respect your time. The main concern when we did work with staff was that we were losing this corner. And so it would be nice if the answer is we can't lose the corner, that is an
The
answer.
answer is we don't know because we don't know what that looks like. Okay, so that's why
Okay.
we're talking about deferring it, is because we haven't seen that the only way you can do something, back to the point a minute ago about one that was accepted, that the only way to do it is to not lose that right-hand side of the original form, because I'd like to use the language of the guidelines and not.
Yeah, I would say if you were to go back and do redrawings, I would have the drawings focused on trying to keep the original form of the building, but still achieve your additions. So make that a restriction on your architect and say, what can we do if there was a restriction on keeping the original form? What's the art of the possible then?
And I think that could be approved then on a staff level, right? If the draftsman can make these changes we're talking about and resubmit to you all, I think they might not need to come back before us, is that right? If we include that?
It depends on how you word your motion.
Okay. I would suggest that we include that in the motion, that, you know, we will leave it open to staff approval if these, you know, if we can respect the original form of the house.
Before you do that, I do have a question about one of the examples that was provided in the packet. It's number 13. 32 first. That appears to be on the right side of that house, right? It's flush with the front facade. Which doesn't appear to really doesn't appear to preserve the corner, at least on that first one. That's completely seen on the second. I mean, how what is that?
No, I believe that's an original, like, side porch to that house that has been enclosed. So most of these examples, I have a bulleted list, most of those examples either weren't approved by DDRC or they're original parts of the house. So if you look at the bulleted list, I think only 2 were things that came before DDRC.
Her bulletin list is on like the first and second page of the staff comments in the very front.
But even then, if you enclose a porch, you are able to see, I guess that's the very first see, I guess, the corner of that house or being on the front porch. I'm just trying to interpret this in light of the first case we heard today.
Sorry, which are you talking about? So what is your question? I don't know, I'd have to look at the Sanborn map, but that is not something that was approved by the DDRC. I have looked at that house in the past, and it did have several additions on the back. And just looking at it, it looks like it could have been a side porch, but that's just a guess.
Do any other members of DDRC have questions for the applicant or staff? All right, thank you.
A question for staff. So if we make a motion to defer with the option to work with you all on details, and if those details are ironed out, have it at staff approval, that wording that I just said, is that okay with you all? Is that acceptable, or would we say if deferral, you would want it to come back to DRC?
say? But should he recommend to defer or to approve with conditions?
I'm sorry, I'm a little lost in the process. Is staff considering a response to that question?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
I was
no
trying to
worries,
figure it
no
out.
worries.
I think if you were to make a motion where they were to work with staff on rearranging the massing, you would probably want to make a motion to approve with certain conditions, and then that, staff work with them, whatever. To defer it would be saying it's going to come back at a later meeting. So if you're trying to avoid that, I would just recommend to approve with whatever conditions you think.
And if we approve with conditions and there was an appeal, that would trigger it to come back to us. If there was some.
If there's
if
something we
you
couldn't work out,
impasse,
yes,
it
they would come back.
Okay.
All right. Do any members of the public wish to come up and speak on this project? All right. Hearing none, I'll open it to a motion.
Okay, I guess I'll attempt to make a motion here. I'd like to recommend approval for the certificate of design for 725 Olive Street, Oakwood Court Architectural Conservation District, with the conditions that the original form of the existing structure be maintained, and that any additions comply with the guidelines, and defer all redesign details to the staff for compliance.
A second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, if staff will please take a vote.
Ms. Sims Branham?
Yes.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Mr. Greenberg? Yes. Mr. Lee Decker?
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Mr. Salibi?
Yes,
Mr. Shelton?
Yes.
Motion passes.
thank you very much. Thank you all very much. All right, that concludes with the regular agenda. Is there any other business we need to discuss? No.
Oh, I was going to.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yes.
Very briefly, next month is Preservation Month, so we have several events coming up. So you should be getting an email soon with all of our events. Some of the events will be, we're doing an energy efficiency blower door demonstration. There's a window workshop, so if you want to actually see how windows can be repaired, we have a workshop on that. We actually have 2 opportunities to see windows that'll be out on the calendar once I finish that. We're also going to do another bike ride this year. Josh has been on a bike ride with us in the past, so he can tell you whether or not you should join us. And we're doing a few happy hours this year, a couple of happy hours this year. So it should be a good month. Won't see you again until middle of the month. So if you want to sign up for any of the events, just check out the calendar that goes out next week.
All right, thank you very much. All right, if there's no other business, then I will adjourn / entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Great job.